In this video, we're going over vocabulary for quadrilaterals and how to solve for angles given the parallelogram. For our example as a quadrilateral, it is a shape with 4 sides. So it has 4 sides, and they are not equal to each other. Or let's say they're different lengths. The angles should add up to 360. The diagonals, there's no properties with the diagonals for a quadrilateral with sides that are different sizes. Parallelogram means that we have 2 sets of parallel sides, so these 2 are parallel to each other and these 2 are parallel. So 2 pair are parallel. The sides of a parallelogram are congruent, so if this was 2, this length would be 2. If this length was 4, this length would be 4. Kind of like a rectangle. Then parallelogram angles. Opposite angles are the same size, so they're congruent, they're equal. This one would be equal to that one. So opposite are equal, same side, add up to 180 degrees because they make a line when they're by each other on the same side. So they should add up to 180. The diagonals of a parallelogram, they bisect each other, so this length would be congruent to that one, and this length would be congruent to that one when they're bisected. Bisect means they cut into 2 equal parts. A rectangle is also a parallelogram, but it's more specific because we have the 2 pair of parallel sides. But with a rectangle, the difference is it has 90-degree angles. So rectangle, those lengths are equal. These ones are congruent and equal. Angles are all 90 degrees. And then the diagonals for a rectangle intersect and are congruent all the way around. So they bisect each other because they split them into 2 equal parts. A square has parallel sides and 90-degree angles, but the difference between a square and a rectangle is that instead of having different sized sides, they're going to have all the same. Angles are 90 degrees, and the diagonals, when they cross, are going to all be the same length when they're bisected. And the square is really cool because it creates a 90-degree angle with the diagonals, and that's called perpendicular bisector. The rhombus is like a square, but what we're doing is we take the bottom piece and we're shifting it, and that's going to change my angles. So when I shift the base of the square, all of these sides are still the same length. They're just not 90 degrees anymore, like the square is. So I'm going to copy that image. All the sides are the same length. The angles, these 2 opposites will be the same sides. Congruent. So then if they are opposite, are equal, same side, should add up to 180. And the diagonals, because we have shifted it over, the distances between the diagonals are going to change. This one becomes smaller and that one becomes bigger, a bigger distance, but they're still bisected. A kite means that the top two lengths are the same distance and the bottom two lengths are the same distance. With a kite, the angles that are congruent are the two on the sides. If you notice, the top is a little bit smaller. It creates a bigger angle. And when they're longer angles, they're steeper, so it creates a smaller angle. So these two will not be congruent. They won't be the same size. Then with the diagonals, they create perpendicular. There's a right angle. But only one of them is bisected. Only the line that's horizontal is bisected. This vertical line, this piece is smaller than the bottom piece, so it's not bisected equally. The trapezoid has one parallel side, so one pair that are parallel. These sides are not the same length. So then none of these sides are going to match each other. They'd all be different sizes. The angles add up to 360. And there's no diagonals on that one. The isosceles trapezoid is just like this, but because it's isosceles, these two sides are the same length. So one pair are parallel with two congruent sides. So these two sides are congruent. The angles on an isosceles trapezoid, the top are congruent and the bottom two are congruent, so they're equal to each other. And it's really cool because on the diagonals, they follow the same pattern. So because the angles match on top, they're congruent on top, the segments on top match. And because of the angles on the bottom two would be congruent. All right, let's go name a few. We have, these are congruent with one parallel, that is an isosceles trapezoid. We have two that are congruent, two here that are congruent, so that would be a kite. This one does not have any markings on it. It only has four sides, that's all I know. So quadrilateral. We have one pair of parallel sides. That is a trapezoid. This one is a square and a rectangle. This one looks like a square, but it doesn't have 90 degrees, so that means that it is a rhombus. And this one has two pairs of parallel sides, so that is a parallelogram. Now we're getting into parallelograms and solving for angles. We know we're trying to find R, and we know T. If they are opposite angles, we know that they're the same size, so they are equal. So this piece and that one have to be the same length, or same measurement. 85 degrees, and that's my solution. On 10, N and M are on the same side. Same side are going to add up to 180. So 112 plus something equals 180. I minus the 112, and we get 68. So this is 68 degrees for the missing angle. Remember to show your work. On the next one, we have U and V, and they're on the same side, which means they should add up to equal 180 minus the 50 over. So we know that this missing angle is 130 degrees. 12, we have opposite angles. Opposite mean they're the same size, so they're equal. So this will equal 125 degrees. On the last four, we're using algebra to solve. So if I have E and G, they are opposite, which means they are equal. 5x plus 10 equals 4x plus 22, minus the 4x from both sides. X plus 10 equals 22, minus the 10. X equals 12. And to finish, we're going to plug it in, and we should get 70 on both of those angles. If I got different answers, I'd know that I solved wrong, because if they're opposite, they should be the same size. 14, they're on the same side, which means they need to add up to 180. So we have 115 plus x plus 65 equals 180. X plus those, when I combine like terms, equal 180. Minus 180 from both sides, which cancels out, so x equals 0. When I plug it in for x, I get 65 for the missing angle. So we have x equals, and we plugged it in. Q and R are on the same side, which means they should add up to equal 180. I have 60 minus 10 is positive 50, minus 50 from both sides, divide by 13, and x is equal to 10. Plug it in, and we get 120 degrees. Last one. T and V are opposite, which means they are equal to each other. Add 8. Oh, sorry, that's positive 8. Minus 8. Minus 8. 7x equals 77. X equals 11. Plug it in. 77 plus 8 is 85, which is true, so we know that we're correct when they are equal to each other. And that is how you solve for angles given a parallelogram.